The time in which to raise your hand for the first community forum is now closed. Can you tell me how many speakers we have?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have 7 speakers.
7. All right, well, let's try to get through them all. Go ahead and call the first one in order, please.
Melissa Swift, go ahead, please.
Mayor and Council, you just listened to City Attorney Veronica Nebb rattle through the dozens of lawsuits our city is facing because of police killings, whistleblowers, and other city misconduct. And as you waste valuable time discussing issues that could have been prevented and sit comfortably in the warmth of your homes, there are hundreds of our unhoused neighbors who are on the streets as temperatures plunge into the 20s. Just this morning, City Manager Mike Malone directed BPD to execute another illegal eviction of our unhoused community members that have been seeking shelter at the library. This is unconscionable and is another vivid example of the continued failure of leadership and management of City Hall. Last week, we got another glimpse of the disastrous management and decision-making of Malone when he tried to bring forward a $30 million loan for the first phase of a retrofit for 400 Mare Island Way. Last March, City Council and the community were told that all plans for 400 Mare Island Way were in a holding pattern and that a comprehensive analysis would be provided in May. That was May of 2021. Council gave specific direction to staff to provide this information, and it was never provided. This is direct insubordination of your authority as elected leaders of our city. Pulled alive by Nyhoff with 400 Mare Island Way. The original staff report shows how he defunded public works and citywide capital improvement projects by $8 million to help buy the building, and then told you it would be $10 to $20 million to retrofit. We now know that was a lie based on fabricated and incomplete information. The problem is that you are still being sold a lie by Malone as the $30 million, which will cost another $32 million in interest, is still based on the false and incomplete information that Nyhoff was using. Continuing to be manipulated and gaslit by bad faith actors who don't have our community's best interests in mind. We've been telling you for months that we need an experienced outside management team to be brought in immediately to stabilize the city, audit key city projects, and assist with the recruitment of a qualified permanent city manager. Just since Malone assumed power in October, we have seen the tragic withholding of information regarding the 3 women who died in Project Roomkey, the shady purchase of an $800,000 house for Malone's water department, and the gifting of $300,000 to a supposed nonprofit to provide shelter without any plan or accounting. All while Malone and interim assistant city manager Gillian Hayes granted themselves and senior staff millions of dollars in raises and bonuses, and all while more and more staff continue to flee the toxic environment created under Nyhoff and perpetuated by Cardwell and now Malone and Hayes. Staff are continuing to tender the resignations. 7 of the 9 senior executive positions inside City Hall are now filled by interims. We are seeing the continued consequences of internal promotion of people who are ill-equipped to perform the duties and functions of their jobs. Enough is enough. We need to do what needs to be done.
Thank you, Ms. Swift. We'll move on to
Mayor, excuse me, Mayor. This is Councilmember Meisner.
Yes, go ahead.
I really object to the commenters attacking of our staff and the integrity of our staff. I'm really getting tired of it. You know, we can all have disagreements on the points, but this attacking staff, I wish that the rest of the council and you, Mayor, would ask the community to stop attacking staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Your comments are noted. We'll call the second speaker, please.
Andrea Source, go ahead.
Hi, I have some comments on what was just said about the right to the public of free speech to express and criticize the people that are acting on our behalf and spending our tax dollars. My original plan for my comment, though, was to start by talking about the encampment suites and the notice to vacate that was given last week. We've spent the past 3 months living the failure of our housing department, seeing how grossly we have unserved this critical, vulnerable population. And just when we thought BPD had stopped these sweeps, we get our unhoused friends near the library get a notice to vacate over a holiday weekend when they have basically no business days left to get support and heading into one of the coldest weeks that I can remember in recent memory. So, you know, it would be nice to hear what people were thinking. I know the McCune Commission was expressing concerns, but we got to answer that by just diverting that energy and directing that energy into fixing the meltdown inside our housing department. You cannot enforce this anti-camping ordinance and disorderly conduct when we are providing absolutely no alternatives for these people, and we know that this is a crisis. And this is bringing me to a broader point, which then comes back to this public comment policy. Our goal as a city should not just be to avoid doing illegal things, which isn't even our priority because you all just heard a laundry list of lawsuits. We need to stop with this idea that it's just whether or not something's illegal. You know, the ACLU, my co-chair Chris and I sent a note on our own to you all that, you know, we are in touch with ACLU lawyers, but it doesn't matter whether the nuances of something are legal or illegal. We know this stuff is wrong. Take the public comment policy. We sent a letter to council and staff about the public comment policy and that it was illegal. And you all tweaked the language just enough to make it technically compliant with the law. But it's still awful, and it still suppresses and chills free speech. And we confirmed, I thought we already addressed this months ago, that it's been litigated that community members have the right to say whatever we would like to say, including criticizing the behavior, the job performance of city staff. These are not personal attacks. These are based on job performance. It doesn't matter with respect to housing, whether these encampment sweeps comply or don't comply with the law. It's an abomination. It's horrific. And I don't want us to get into the weeds and have to bring in lawyers, pick apart the Martin decision, decide whether Christian Help Center is technically a viable alternative. It's not. In practical terms, it's not. We don't have options for our unhoused. And just because something isn't technically illegal doesn't mean that it's okay. We shouldn't be motivated by threats of lawsuit. And we need to have higher standards for ourselves, for our city. And I'm saying that to everyone that's reached out to the ACLU asking us, hey, is this illegal? If you see something wrong, just say something. Demand better, because, again, something not being illegal shouldn't be the.
Thank you, Ms. Source. It's my understanding that the people who were removed from the library all did have beds and received one. Can we call the third speaker, please?
Lee and Derek Holloway, go ahead.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Very good.
Yes, we've been concerned about no jobs for the youth, no training, no skill centers, no advanced learning for skills and techniques. And they're going around killing each other, killing and breaking in people's houses. Catalytic converters are off the chain, being stolen, costing citizens thousands of dollars who pay taxes. I'm a small business owner. I'm not the only one. Neighbors just up the street all around the mayor's house. We are tired of this no action from the police or the city council or mayor. We need protection from people, and we also need to get the youth into some kind of training programs so they can have something to do besides do donuts and racing up and down the streets, tearing up people's property that people pay tax for, hardworking, everyday citizens. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Holloway. It is my understanding that the city manager is working on several youth projects, and perhaps he could comment on that during his time at the end of the evening. Can we move on to our fourth speaker, please?
Yes, David Haldane, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your service, particularly in light of that closed session. That couldn't have been easy, and I'm sure we've all had a long day today. I am complicit in a shooting on February 9th, 2019. It may have been a police assassination, but I'm not sure. I am complicit because I paid taxes for the salaries of the men that did the shooting. I am complicit because I elected representatives that are not providing transparency and accountability. That action was another gaping wound to community trust with the police department, and the ongoing lack of transparency is a gangrenous infection. The only cure for this disease is honesty, humility, and transparency. I ask that you please immediately direct Attorney Nebb to release the badge-bending report and allow Chief Williams to have press conferences without city attorney approval in the future. I'd like to tell you a story about the not-too-distant future. It's August. Smoke hangs heavy in the air and the city is burning. FEMA is overwhelmed trying to respond to Fairfield and Vacaville, which have been wiped off the map. 400 houses in Vallejo have burned. Some of the residents made it out in their cars, but there's now 900 people with no shelter, no possessions, and no support. What is Vallejo's plan for supporting them? If they camp on city property, will they be evicted? Will they be dispersed throughout the town so support services have to find them? If it was me in a tent on the waterfront with my family trying to recover my life from being destroyed, would I be so ignored? Is the treatment of the unfortunate among us a clue as to how the city is prepared to deal with any of us should we fall on misfortune? The events of today are yet another reminder. We are not doing enough to serve our homeless residents. Yes, the state has closed institutions and removed support. Yes, some people came from out of town for our quiet parks and good weather. Yes, some people are addicted or have emotional issues or can't figure out how to live inside. That doesn't mean we ignore them. We, as a community of faith, morals, and reason, can do better. What happened today at City Hall proved that compassion and outreach is more effective than blunt legal instruments and dictums. $100 of coffee and donuts did more work than the threat of government violence and the expense that entails. Just last year, the mayor and several members of council identified the first step of the solution: safe camping and parking sites. We must provide the people with an emergency bastion where they do not have to fear for their safety, their stability, and where supportive services can easily find them. The current method of inflicting a homeless diaspora on the city through lack of action is unacceptable to the residents and cruel to the people in crisis. I ask that you direct city staff to identify locations for the community and begin immediately seeking community-sourced designs and plans for a site in each district. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Mr. Haldane. Perhaps the city manager can address the badge bending issue at some proper time. We'll move on to our fifth speaker, please.
Robert Brecke.
I would just encourage again that the city be concerned about trust, open government, transparency, politicians, city staff, and police that serve the people, not the opposite. And in terms of a city council member that spoke up and doesn't want to hear, we have been listening for way too long, 2 years of backroom deals, things that were done over in covert ways and very duplicit ways by Nyhoff. And we have a complicity that comes from council at times that he might have left the building, but his presence is still there. And to have citizens speak up about how terrible that is and what turnaround should be made, should be taken very, very, very seriously and really make a difference in terms of serving the citizens and not just complimenting city staff. On a personal note, I'm asking that I don't have no idea what time. It'd be helpful to know the time. I'm a co-owner of a building in the downtown that is connected, as you know, to City Fiber, part of the City Fiber Optics Committee 7 years ago. I'm inquiring on behalf of a few of our tenants. How will I know that our tenants will continue to have their service uninterrupted? INU has asked the city for pricing to maintain their service to our building, which contains their customers. And what's the plan to maintain service of our building? A lot of money was spent to get fiber into the building. I would expect that we would have an open access network, as was included in INU's proposal to the city that was really never really considered. And by the way, in terms of just getting access to all these funds that the city has plans to get a hold of, it's very imperative that the city have an open access network to qualify for those funds. So I would expect that our tenant, INU, would be getting a price.
Thank you, Mr. Brecke. Perhaps the city manager or the city attorney can respond to that at the end of the meeting. Move on to our sixth speaker, please.
Phone number ending in 468. Go ahead.
Hi, it's Ann Clark. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ann.
Please confirm. Thank you much. So 4 things on my mind tonight. I don't know if I'll be able to get through them all. It's been an epic week in terms of bad performance by city staff, and I'm sorry that Member Meisner doesn't like them to hear about it, but in terms of job performance, the public needs to be able to point out when there are gaps in public service. These are public service jobs, after all. It's hard to say what's more disturbing, whether it's how the city has handled the search for a new police station or how the city has handled the unhoused. I'm going to start with the police station. I'm glad that the hearing on this has been moved to March 8th, but frankly, 2 things. One is the staff report and the materials they did were inadequate and really needed do-over. Staff has not done due diligence on this project. Number 2, a project of this size, I think, really needs its own town hall or study session, some form of engagement with the public. Number 2, about the homeless issue. Obviously, we've had a spike in encampments, and we need to get a grip on what our true population is. So what kind of game is the city playing to do evictions a couple days before you have your point-in-time census count? I don't like the encampments, and I want some sort of sane policy for how we support and treat the unhoused, but that's just callous, and it's wrong on so many levels I don't have time to go into right now. So what I would suggest is number 3. We need to borrow some money. I would suggest that the city look into getting the money to do the repairs we need on Amador Street, which in the last estimate were $9.1 million, and couple with that the money that we need to actually build the navigation center, whatever that amount is. That's where our loan should be. And then finally, number 4, frankly, through the best efforts of different department heads who've been promoted to handle city management, I don't think that solution is working. I really think we need an interim turnaround manager to handle things, let these department heads go back to their departments, and then have the interim city manager manage things at a global level and also do a search for a permanent city manager. This is really critical. We're spending money like we're just going to go into bankruptcy again, and it's very worrisome how things are trending. This is not to say that those people aren't making their best efforts or that they're...
Thank you, Ms. Carr. I appreciate your comments. We'll move on to our 7th and final speaker on the first community forum.
Chris Platzer.
Thank you. I'm hearing noises that the city manager has found money to pay for a position in the IT department to supplement the transition, which Robert Brecke alluded to about the municipal fiber from its current public-private partnership with INYO to a new public-private partnership with a company called Smart Fiber. If that is true, it speaks to the fact that the current director of innovations is not equipped with the expertise, and I'm run the risk of getting the ire of Councilperson Meisner to oversee the transition so that it becomes smooth for the 75 customers on the network. I'm also hearing noises that Smart Fiber is already actively contacting the existing customers and pitching them that they are the authorized purveyor of internet services for the city's fiber optic project. The third and final thing that I want to bring to your attention is the way the current Wi-Fi signal is being sent to the liveaboards in the public marina is using a circuit that comes off of the ferry terminal that goes back to City Hall that uses a CNET 2 circuit. CNET 2 is an interagency, an intergovernment circuit that cannot be made available to the public. It's analogous to, and this is the only way I can put it, the tree lights that were in downtown were getting electricity by stealing it from PG&E. They did it for 5 years and no one seemed to care until they took the tree lights down from the trees and had to replace them. And suddenly City Hall got a come to Jesus moment that says we can't keep stealing electricity from PG&E because if they find out about it, we'll get in trouble. Well, you're doing the same thing with the Wi-Fi that you're delivering to the liveaboards in the public marina. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Platzer. That will conclude our first community forum. Anyone who's wishing to speak at the second community forum may do so at that time. We will move on to item number 7, the public comment regarding the consent calendar. Navi, would you start the public sign-up clock for the consent calendar? We do have 7 items on the consent calendar this evening. And are there any council members who wish to remove any item from the consent calendar?
Mr. Mayor, could I say something real quick?
Yes, Mr. Malone.
So it's in regards to the homeless, comments that were made about the homeless. So first of all, the Christian Help Center and Fighting Back Partnership, we were able to secure rooms or beds for every individual that was unhoused at City Hall. We also provided them with bus passes, information on where they could actually go to get vaccinated if they needed to get vaccinated. But I want to say this really strongly. We did not evict anyone from City Hall. No one was arrested. No one was cited from down at City Hall. Some people left on the court this morning. And as a matter of fact, with assistance from our Public Works Department, they were actually cleaned up some of the items that were skewed in some of the area. So we did not send PD out there to arrest and remove people from those locations. I wanted to make sure everybody understood that that narrative was false and it was not something that we undertook.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malone, for that clarification. I appreciate your efforts on a continuing effort to solve an unsolvable problem. Councilmember Meisner? You're still muted.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank Mike and his team. With the oncoming storm, and it's going to be the coldest on record in February, and so it was great to have those folks go into beds and willingly. And I find it really frustrating that the city staff is being attacked for moving people to warm beds in the worst weather that we can imagine. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. That's why we try to clarify things at these public hearings.